Residual income. There are people who say that you can get residual income. You just invest in real estate or stake a lot of crypto or set up a residual income-based business, and then you can just go to Costa Rica and sit on the beach for the rest of your life, and the money comes in and you don't have to do anything. It's awesome. But there are other people on the internet who say, what? That residual income is bullshit. The entire concept is a lie. There is no such thing as residual income, and if you try to pursue residual income, you're stupid because there's no such thing. Which side is right? The answer is neither. They're both wrong. It's a little more complicated than that. I'm going to draw it out for you right now. First off, you have to look at people who have, quote, residual income, and you have to examine them. So in my experience, over the past 30 years of my life working with entrepreneurs, business owners, wealthy people, most of whom are much more wealthy than me, have I seen people who have residual income or income that is close to residual? The answer is yes. However, I would say 99% of these people who have residual income fall into one of two categories. The first category is what I'll call owls. That means old, wealthy, and low interest. What do I mean by that? These are guys who are old men. I don't mean old like me. I don't mean older. I mean like old men who really can't work anymore. They don't want to work anymore. They're all burned out. Physically, they just can't do it. They're well over the age of 65 in most cases. And what they do is they have maybe $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million somewhere that they've saved up over the course of their lifetimes. And they just throw it in the bank, or they do something stupid and boring like bonds. And they make maybe 3% on their money. And they get these checks off their several $1 million, and it's enough to pay for their retirement. So they're not doing anything super exciting. And these are the kind of guys where, all the crypto nerds say, oh, you're so stupid. Why'd you put all this money in cash? Why'd you do that? You could make so much more money if you bought Ethereum and Cardano, and they don't give a shit about this. What people don't realize, and I found this very interesting, most people do not realize that there are lots of men in the world who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, $100 million plus, and they're not invested in anything. They just shove all their money in the bank. Literally. And these people say, oh, you're so stupid. You're going to get destroyed by inflation. You could make so much more money if you did X, Y, and Z. And these guys, these old guys, for the large part, they don't care. They don't give a shit. That's just not a priority to them. So do they have residual income? Kind of, but they're in this category. Now, the second category of people I have seen who have real residual income, I will call them LLs, like LL Cool J. Low lifestyle. So this is the guy who is not old. Maybe he's in his 30s, maybe 40s. Maybe if he's lucky, he's in his late 20s. And he does something like this. He buys a house, okay? And then he rents out the house to a family. And then he spends a few years and he pays off the house. So maybe he buys the house, let's use simple numbers. He buys the house for $400,000, and over the course of several years, he finally pays off the mortgage, and now it's worth $700,000 or whatever. There's a family living in it, and they pay him rent. And after the expenses of the rent, of which there are many when you own real estate, he makes maybe, $1,100 a month, right? In true residual income. So then what he does is he's low lifestyle. He doesn't need a fancy car. He doesn't need a car at all. He doesn't need a fancy house. He doesn't care about fancy clothes. He doesn't care about traveling. He doesn't care about any of that shit. So what he does is he moves to Thailand, South America, Costa Rica, somewhere really, really, really cheap. And he buys a little hut or a little studio apartment near the beach, 10 minutes away from the beach, and he lives on his $1,100 a month. He doesn't have any money. He doesn't have any spare income at the end of the month. He lives very low, but he's more of a hippie type guy, more of a surfer type dude. He doesn't really care. And I will say this again, 99% of the people who have real residual income fall in one of these two categories. It is very rare, if ever, that I see someone who has real residual income not in one of these two categories. Now, here are the problems with these two categories. Problem number one is he's old. The owl is an old man. Do you want to wait till you're really, 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 really old to get a decent amount of money? I don't. I saw my dad do that. My dad worked very, very hard throughout his 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and finally in his late 50s, he was able to retire, but he was in his late 50s, and he was kind of burned out by then, and was like, oh, thank God I'm retired. I don't know about you, but I've never wanted to wait that long for any residual income. That's the first problem. The second problem is these guys are making 3% interest. They're not making very much money. It's not very super impressive, which means that's not a lot of money unless you're worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, frankly, if you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, none of this is really an issue to you because you could invest your money at 3% and be perfectly fine if you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But I don't think you're really worried about residual income if you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Now let's look at the LLs. The problem with these guys is $1,100. Now, some of you watching this video might be perfectly happy making $1,100 for the rest of your life, living in a less developed, very inexpensive country for the rest of your life. There is a percentage of you who would be cool with that. However, the vast majority of you watching this video are not going to be happy with $1,100. What do we talk about here at Sovereign CEO as the minimum income for long-term happiness? $85,000 a year US. That's $7,000 US. You will not be happy, statistically speaking, unless you're making at least $7,000 a month, and the empirical data behind this is massive. So that's problem number one. Problem number two with these guys, even bigger problem, is that LLs are temporary. They have residual income, but it never lasts. What happens with this example, the one I gave you earlier about the guy with the house, is that he's in Thailand living on the beach, right? He's getting his $1,100 a month from the family, and then the family moves out of the house, and now his income goes to zero. And he goes, oh shit, and he gets on a plane and he flies back to the United States or UK or wherever he is, and he scrambles like a maniac to get renters back in the house. He has to somehow figure out how to make the house payment while no one's in there. He freaks the fuck out. He borrows a bunch of money on credit cards. Then guess what he has to do? He has to go back to work. He has to go back to work and he has to get a job. I have known many men over the course of my life who've lived this kind of lifestyle. They save up a hunk of money or they get some kind of temporary residual scenario. They go live on the beach for 6 months, a year, year and a half, 2 years. Something happens, or they run out of money, or the renters leave, or whatever. They go, God damn it, and they have to move back to the Western world, go back to work at a job they hate, work another 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, then they do it again. They leave, they take 2 or 3 years off, then they go back and forth their whole lives. So the question you have to ask yourself is, does residual income count if it's temporary? No one ever asks that question. No one ever looks at that aspect of it. If you have residual income, but it only lasts 3 years, then you got to do something else with your time. Does it really count? In my opinion, no. It doesn't really count as 100% residual income. So that's the first piece to this in terms of real residual income. Now we got to talk about what real residual income means, and let me explain this. Residual income is not black or white. It's not 100% or 0%. There's actually a range of what residual income is. Income can be 90% residual, it could be 70% residual, it could be, 50% residual. That's how this works. I will give you an example from my life, okay? As many of you know, I sell ebooks, I sell online courses, I sell a lot of things that do not require my time. And so a lot of people will say, oh, ebooks, online video courses, that's awesome because it's residual income. Once you set up the video course, once you set up the ebook and you sell it, and you're making all this money on Amazon and ebooks and PDFs and things like that, it's residual income, right? Isn't that awesome? Is it truly residual? Yes and no. Yes, in that certainly there are many nights where I wake up and I check my income statements and I have made money while I'm sleeping. That's residual income. It's very nice. However, let me give you a hypothetical scenario. I sell ebooks, I sell online courses, things that do not take my time once these things are developed. I also sell coaching programs and things like that, but those actually take my time. So let's not count those. So in terms of the quote residual items that I sell, ebooks and online courses that are video courses only, is it true that I make money on a residual basis without doing any work to get that income? That is partially true. However, let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say that tomorrow morning, I just retired. I just stopped working. I stopped checking my email. I stopped doing YouTube videos. I stopped doing anything on social media. I stopped sending any emails to my mailing list. I stopped returning anyone's phone calls. I just did a Dave Chappelle and just washed my hands of it all and went to Maldives and lived on the beach for the rest of my life and turned off my phone. So now here's a question. Would my income suddenly go to zero if I did that? The answer is no, but here's how this works. If we were to do a graph, okay? And this is time, and this is residual, quote unquote, income for me, right? And let's say this is when I left. I suddenly vanished off the face of the earth and I stopped engaging with my audience, okay? No more paid advertising, no more organic traffic, nothing. I just stopped doing everything. Would my income immediately go to zero? No, it wouldn't. My income would continue. And that's the good news when you have things like ebooks, courses, and things like that. My income would actually continue. So in that respect, it is residual. However, would it stay this way forever? No. What would happen eventually? It might take a few weeks, it might take a few months, but what would eventually happen is my sales would start to drop. And the longer I did nothing, the more it would drop. And it would keep dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. Now, would it ever go to zero? Probably not. It would probably stay at some much lower level in perpetuity, perhaps, at least until some point. And this period here could take a while. It could take a good, I would estimate, 3 years before it went down to its new permanent low. So I would still be making money throughout this point, right? But I wouldn't be making the same amount of money. Does that make sense? So does that mean it is residual? Sort of. Does that mean it's 100% residual? No. I classify this kind of income as perhaps 70% residual. So it's 70%, not 100%, because I need to be engaged here on the internet in my mailing list, cold ads, organic traffic, free content like this YouTube video. I need to be engaged with my audience to maintain this if I don't ever want that to drop, which means it does require some work to maintain. So it's not 100% residual. Now that's the argument that these guys make where they say there's no such thing as residual income. That's where they are right. If you have a bunch of investments, for example, let's say you're staking a bunch of Ethereum or what have you, okay? You have a bunch of residual crypto investments. Does that mean you're doing no work? No. As soon as you pick up your phone in that morning and you check the price of your crypto, that's work. You're working. You have to pay attention to the investments that you have. That's why they say put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket. Watching the basket takes time. So even if you're a full-time investor and you don't own a business, you're going to spend time and effort managing and watching and redirecting your investments, right? That's work. So that requires some work. Now you may argue, the counterargument would be, yes, but that's not 40 hours a week. That might be 3 hours a week, 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week. True. So that means it is partially residual. Make sense? So the people that say you can start a business or you can invest in real estate and then you can have 100% residual income and just go to the beach, that's not correct. If you invest in real estate, you're going to have to watch those real estate investments. If you hire a property manager, which you should, you're going to have to watch the property manager. You're going to have some challenges with that property manager that occasionally you're going to have to fix. I will give you an example from my life. Many, many years ago, when I was investing in real estate, one of the pieces of property I owned was a condominium, which I do not recommend owning if you rent it out. But anyway, I had a property manager manage that investment. And so the property manager would receive the check from the tenants, they would pay out any expenses that month for repairs and things like that, and they would pay me the remainder. And one day, they didn't pay me my rent check. And I called them up, I said, hey, where's my rent check? You're like 5, 6, 7 days late. They said, well, I'm sorry, sir, the homeowners association called us, who manages that condominium, and they said you owe them, whatever the number was, $3,000 for a new roof improvement. And I said, excuse me, that has nothing to do with you. That's my fucking money, not the association's money. I will take care of that myself between me and them, which I did. This has nothing to do with you. So I had to fight my own property management company to get my money. And eventually I got it. But the point is, I had to spend hours and hours and hours of time fucking around trying to get that money back that was mine. You see my point? So when they say there's no such thing as true residual income, they're kind of correct in that respect. Now, on the flip side, they are also wrong because, as I just showed you a second ago, I have met people who do have pretty much 100% residual income. These guys who take $7 million and just stick it in a bank CD or something, or bonds, they don't really have to do anything. They don't have to work at all, and they do get money. Or these guys who temporarily are on the beach for a year and a half, they don't really have to do much either. So there is such thing as residual income, but it's just more complicated than people think. What I think you should do is that you should set an objective for the number of income streams you want in your life that are partially residual. It is very nice to have many partially residual income streams, and I would know because I have several. Ebooks, online courses. I also have coaching programs where I don't have to spend a lot of time, just a few hours a month, but have recurring revenue every month in the amount of 5 figures for just one income stream. I have those. They are partially residual, and they're awesome. So the beauty of partially residual income streams is that you can have many of them. If you have a zero income stream, so let's say you have a zero income stream, that would be something like coaching, consulting, if you're an architect. That is zero residual because you have to do almost 100% of the work in order to get the revenue. So the problem with that kind of income stream, even though they can be very high revenue income streams, is that you can't have too many. You can only have a certain number of clients that you service in a given month, right? That's just the reality of the world. But the beauty of partially residual income streams is that you can have a lot of them. You can have 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them, and they only take you a few hours a month or a few hours a week to maintain, which really skyrockets your income while keeping your overall work hours low, which is exactly what we talk about here at Sovereign CEO with the Alpha 2.0 business model. High income, low work. The way you can pull that off is you focus on income streams that are partially, not 100%, but partially residual. Then you get the best of both worlds within the realities of the universe. This is way better than being an owl or an LL. I would much rather have my financial setup than be an old man who has a few $1 million in the bank earning 3% interest, or being the young hippie surfer dude who is living on $1,100 a month living in Thailand just for about a year or two until he has to go back to the United States to fix his problems. If these topics are of interest to you, I do 3 videos a week here on how you can set up your own location independent income, move to a less bad country, or at least set up an international backup plan, and do all these things for very little money. You can click one of these videos and I'll see you there.